this phrase before, either directed at yourself or maybe heard someone else say it. Have you ever heard, "You should be grateful"? Have you ever heard that? You should be grateful. Is it usually preceded by something that you don't like and they're trying to quiet you down a little bit? Maybe if there's a little child who's in the grocery store and wants a piece of candy, and a parent might say, "You should be grateful that I even brought you out of the house." It's a phrase that I would say has a pretty negative connotation. And I think there's a reason that there's a negative connotation. It's kind of forcing you, maybe calling you out on something that would call you immoral. You're just not grateful. Oof, it's tough. And lots of people use it. In the opera industry, about 15 years ago, I think that's how old Facebook is, it was a common practice for opera singers to, before they were going into a performance or with a company, they would post about how grateful they were to be able to be there and sing. "I'm so grateful to work with these amazing artists. I'm so grateful to work with these amazing musicians, this amazing company, this amazing administration," whatever it is. And it was just these long posts, and I was like, oh, this is, I'm happy you're grateful. But then it almost became a prerequisite for everyone to do. Why aren't you posting about how grateful you are to be working for us? Why haven't you posted this? And then it turned to, "I'm going to have you do work for us for free." You see how the opera world works is you get paid for however many performances you do, right? So let's say you're going somewhere and they say you're going to perform 6 times, 6 performances, and you get X amount per performance. So you're not paid for rehearsals, you're not paid for any of that time, you're paid this much for the performances that you're going to do. And they might give you a stipend or dividend, or not dividend, whatever those things are called. But you're only paid for performances. And what they started doing was saying, "Oh, but while you're here, we're going to have this special dinner for donors. It would be great if you could come and sing this special dinner." Now, they wouldn't tell you, like, before you went for the contract, right? No, they get you in there, and you'd be in rehearsals, they're like, "Oh, in a few days we're going to have a dinner for donors." Or, "Oh, you know what? Next week, we're going to talk to some kids in a school. It would be great if you would come along at 8 o'clock in the morning and sing some opera." You can wonder how well that went over. But again, you should be grateful. Now, that is not what I'm hearing in this gospel. But boy, sometimes can you hear it, or hear it. And as you hear it, you think, "I should be grateful, I should be grateful, I should be grateful." I don't believe that that's what this gospel is for. This gospel is an invitation to gratefulness. Now, you might think, oh, that's semantics, right? I mean, you can tell somebody they should be grateful, or you can invite them to be grateful. But I think that there's a really big difference in that. Leaving space for someone to be grateful, or telling them to be grateful. It just hits different. And if you give space for yourself to be grateful, Jesus writes, we're grateful because God is merciful. We're grateful because God has forgiven. And so then in turn, we forgive. Love your neighbors, love your enemies. As you can tell from that psalm, loving your enemies was not something new that Jesus brought about. He was very learned about the Old Testament. I mean, even more so since he's gone. And in that Old Testament psalm, Do not fret your enemies. Do not fret your enemies. We are grateful because God has been merciful, God has been kind, God has forgiven us, and therefore we forgive others. Even when it's not fun. And my favorite part, don't expect anything in return. That's a tough one. How common is it for us to give someone something out of a Christian sense and then say, oh, you'll owe me one. Or I have not told you that I was going to give you anything, but now I've given you something, and now you're going to give me something in return. Maybe it's all just underlying. Maybe those words aren't said. That expectation is so clearly present so many times. Right? That phrase, you should be grateful, is almost like, because I've done something for you, you better do something for me. How do you move beyond that expectation? And I believe it's gratefulness. What if you're just grateful that you could give someone something? Grateful to receive someone for something? What if we just so live into gratefulness, not to brush aside every negative thing that happens? No, that is not how that works, unfortunately. But living into gratefulness and wiping away those expectations. When I guess it was only 6 years ago, so 2019, I went to help my sister with my 5-year-old, almost 6-year-old twin nieces. And I relocated up to Norfolk. And she was adamant, maybe not adamant, but close to adamant, that she didn't love the idea of me coming up. But it wasn't because we didn't live well together. We did. We had lived together before, and we did just fine. But what a heavy thing to hold that someone was going to come and move it to help you. Go out of their way to help you. And she was like, well, what is he going to expect of me in return? Guess what I expected of her? Nothing. Why? Because I was so grateful that I got to spend some time with my twin 5-year-old nieces. Well, they weren't 5 then, but that gratefulness that I was just able to give something to her. I'm not saying I do this perfectly. I do not. But if we allow that invitation, that offer, to step into gratefulness, grateful that we can give, grateful that we can receive. In the gospel it says, give and you will be given to you. And we don't do it solely because we're hoping to get something in return. We do it because we have been given the best gift of all, Jesus Christ. The best gift of all. Given so that we could be forgiven. Loved so that we could learn to love. Shown mercy and care so that we can be merciful and care. And so when I hear this gospel in my head the first time through, it might seem a little intense because they seem like really difficult, high achievements to give. Love your enemy. It's sometimes difficult to just love the people that you actually love. But we love our enemies because we have been forgiven, because of Jesus Christ, because the gift of love that we've been given, that we now have the joy of being able to give to other people. So hopefully next time you hear the phrase, you should be grateful, you'll think, what if I just invite someone or give someone space or freedom to be grateful? Don't should them. Invite them as we are invited to this table, as we are invited into God's loving embrace every moment.